I want to welcome everyone for coming. Thank you to my mother, my grandmother for coming from Connecticut. Thank you to my Aunt Aline for coming from Virginia. To my Chaver and Con Schumann from calling in from Sharon. I'm Andrew. You're calling in from Quincy. I think
And
it's
Aunt Annie.
If you want to unmute yourself, you feel free. Anyone who wants to unmute, feel free.
Thank you to my Aunt Annie for calling in from California, and thank you to my dad for being in person. Before I start, I want to thank my Chavrusa, Dovi Sturm, who I learned the Gemaras of Megillah with. And Dovi and I, we learned together in the year Tufshin Pei Bays, which was before 2 terms ago. And he taught me the Gemaras, and I've been able to review them since then, and hopefully we'll be able to expound on some of them now at this juncture.
And Miss Pastella's here too.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you everyone else for coming. So Megillas Esther, the sefer that we read on Purim, literally means to gila, to reveal, Esther, the hidden, revealing the concealed. It's well known that Hashem's name is not in the Megillah. The Megillah could be seen as a happenstance. One event turned to the other. Ahasuerus had a party. Vashti didn't want to come. Esther became the queen. Haman had a plot. Esther was Jewish. She was able to save the Jews. So the whole Megillah could be seen as cause and effect. One of the ideas of Megillah is to reveal Hashem in the Megillah. The minig on Purim is to eat foods that are wrapped inside of other.
For example, kreplach. And one reason for this minig is because on Purim, the avoda, what we're trying to do is to reveal that which is concealed. The Nesivos, who's a major author on Shulchan Aruch, wrote a parish on Megillas Esther, which he titled Megillas Starim, which similarly means to reveal that which is concealed. And the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Kuf Lamed Tes Amud Beis, brings in the pasuk in Devarim, pasuk Parak Lamed Aleph, pasuk Yud Ches. The Gemara is trying to figure out where is there a hints for Esther from the Torah, and it says Anochi Haster Aster Panai, that I will conceal my face. Hashem speaking. So the whole concept of Hashem being concealed and us trying to reveal him to show the hashgacha, to show where Hashem is involved, is a major avoda of Purim. Does someone have a comment? Okay. So that is a major overview of the Megillah, and that's what the Nesivos calls his whole commentary on the Megillah, is trying to reveal that which is concealed. Today, I'm not coming to give an overview of the Megillah. I'm not coming to give a summary of everything that happened in the Megillah. I just want to give over a few of the ideas that are being taught to us from the Sukkim of the Megillah and from the Gemaras. So, the first topic I'd like to speak about is the aspect of where we see kas, anger, in the Megillah, and how are some ways to be on top of this midah. So we find, just from the straight read of the Psukim, Parak Aleph, first chapter, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, we find Achashverosh puts Vashti to death, because Vashti refused to appear at Achashverosh's party, so therefore Achashverosh puts Vashti to death. And only thereafter, in the second Parak Beis, Pasuk Aleph, the Megillah says that Achashverosh's anger subsides. Similarly, in Parak Zayin, Pasuk Yud, Achashverosh puts Haman to death while Achashverosh is still angry. So we find 2 times Achashverosh acted under the influence of kas, under the influence of anger, and he made a rash decision to put one of the people who's close to him, either his wife or his second in command, to death while he was under the impact of anger. So we see that this is a very strong midah. Now, Chazal speak pretty seriously against this midah. Like the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chaf Chaf Amud Beis says, Kol hakois kilu obid avodah zara. Anyone who serves idols, anyone who gets angry is as if he serves idols. And I think the reason for this is because someone who serves avodah zara, someone who serves idols, is attributing power to some other entity besides Hashem. Namely that idol. He feels like it has some power. So too, if a person gets angry, that means he's attributing some power to that which made him angry, as opposed to saying that everything came from Hashem, that this person is a mere intermediary. One Tisha B'Av I heard on Chavetz Chaim video, speaker spoke out from the Gra, a mashal for what it means to refrain from kas. So the mashal is that if a person is holding a stick and strikes his friend, so does it make sense to get angry at the stick? The stick is an inanimate object just being held by the person. If anything, maybe there's grounds to become upset at the one who's holding the stick. But certainly it does not make sense to get upset at the stick. So if we recognize and realize that Hashem is the one holding the stick, so to speak, of course Hashem is always acting for our best interests, but any person in the middle who seems to harm us is really only a middleman and has no real power of his own, then we will avoid getting upset at such a person. And as far as getting angry at Hashem, it's first off, this is already a step. The fact that a person is realizing that whatever troubles he has came from Hashem. But if a person realizes that what Hashem brought about for him is for his best interests, then this will make it easier for a person to understand and tolerate and possibly even be pleased about what's going on, knowing that it's come from Hashem, from Hashem's care. Rabbi Katzny, Meir Shiva, he says on the word chayrus, he says a few explanations, but one of them is belief that everything Hashem does is for the good. That's the definition of a free person, if a person believes that everything Hashem does is for the good. Do we have any comments about this section?
Go ahead. Me? Okay. I had two. One, I can read my writing. I was wondering if one of the reasons Mordecai told Esther not to say she was Jewish was fear of Achashverosh's anger, or just general anti-Semitism, since you brought up Achashverosh's anger, as a key point of the story. If you thought that he was specifically worried that Achashverosh would, kill her.
Well, I would think it might be the opposite, because Achashverosh did a lot of hishtadlus. He did a lot of effort to try to get Esther to reveal her identity, and she didn't. So I would think that would have possibly raised his ire, and for various reasons which are discussed, Mordecai encouraged Esther not to reveal her identity.
And the other one I was just thinking about when you talk about not being angry because it's not being angry when someone hurts you because, it's coming from Hashem. I was actually having that talk with someone else this morning about Hamas on October 7th, and it's very challenging to see it that way in real time. I think it's easier for us to look at a distance back in the Torah, at the megillah, than things that we personally experience.
Right, to look at Hester Panim, and when Hashem sends punishment, and to look at it with a positive lens is a very high madrega, it's a very high level. There are those who have been able to do it, including some people who have lost loved ones in the war, but this is the reason why we have a long lifetime, is to build up our madrega, build up our level until we are able to, even b'shas meis, at the time that something seemingly bad has happened, to look at it as for it's for the good.
Janice?
Yeah, thank you. And when you were talking about the stick being neutral and how it's used, I thought about comments people have made about guns, that how they're used. It's not the gun, it's what the person is doing with the gun that does the damage. Or does the hunting, whatever the use is of the gun.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
I think it's a little of both.
In Parak Aleph Pasuk Beis, Vashti refuses to come to Achashverosh's party. So why did Achashverosh's wife Vashti refuse to come to the party? So the Gemara wonders maybe it's because she was tsanua, she was a modest woman, she didn't want to appear immodestly. But the Gemara rules that out because the Gemara says that Vashti was an immoral woman, and she, in fact, threw her party next to the men's party because she had immorality in mind. So the Gemara instead says two reasons why she refused to come to the party. Pretty similar reasons, one to each other. One is that she did not appear because she got saras, she got like a skin disease. Another opinion is because she grew a tail. That's why Vashti did not come to the party. Now, Achashverosh thought that Vashti did not come to the party because she was disrespecting him. Achashverosh accepts Haman's premonition, Haman's suggestion that Vashti did something wrong in Parak Aleph Pasuk Tes Zayin. And the king is super angry. The pasuk says, Parak Aleph Pasuk Beis, Vayiktzuf HaMelech Me'od V'Chamasu Barabo, that the king got really upset and the anger burned inside of him. So clearly there was something that really disturbed him about Vashti's not coming. Now, Achashverosh could have used flexible thinking and maybe thought about some other reasons why Vashti could not have come other than the fact that she was disrespecting him. Maybe Vashti was feeling ill or she was inebriated. But Achashverosh was stuck on this one line of thinking of saying that it must be that Vashti did not come because she was disrespecting me. And as it turns out, it wasn't disrespect at all. It was the fact that she had some physical condition that would have made it embarrassing for her to appear at the party. And had Achashverosh known that Vashti had this physical condition, Achashverosh would not have wanted Vashti to appear at the party. But because Achashverosh had this rigid thinking, so therefore he got so upset and he ended up putting his wife to death. I'll quote from Marishiva from Muncie, Rabbi Braun, from the Sfas Emes, to famous Mishnah Avos, Parak Aleph, Mishnah Vav. Tevidan es kol ha'adam l'kaf zchus, that a person should judge every person for the marriage. So how is this possible? So Rabbi Braun says it's that the Mishnah is telling us Dan es kol ha'adam, judge the whole person. It doesn't say kol adam, every person. It says kol ha'adam, the entirety of the person. So for example, if it's a person who cut someone in line, so on one hand that might be a frustrating act, and even if there are a few approaches. One, you could say maybe they cut me in line because they were in a big hurry or they didn't realize. But another approach is to look at the totality of this person. And it's true, he may have done this negative thing of cutting me in line, but maybe he does other mitzvahs. Maybe he does other chesed for other people, for his family. Maybe he's osek b'tzarchei tzibur. Maybe he comes to daven. Maybe he learns. So there's more. If you look at the whole person, then it'll be a more positive overall picture. Moreover, Marishiv Rabbi Katzin, he says, more so than getting into judging favorably, he says it's best is just not to judge other people at all. For example, if a person sees someone coming into shul dressed not appropriately for tefillah, It's best not to think about, oh, well, why did they dress this way? Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they couldn't afford better clothes. Just better not to get busy with judging the other person, and not to get busy with them. Now I'll bring down a couple halachos from the Sefer Chavetz Chaim in Gimel Zayin. The Chavetz Chaim is talking about the halachic definition of dan l'kaftzchus, judging Jews in situations of doubt. So, if a person sees a tzaddik gomer, someone who always does the right thing, if such a person, like a true tzaddik, even if what he looks like what he did was wrong, it appears to be wrong, a person is still obligated to judge them favorably. For an average upstanding Jew who usually does the right thing but occasionally stumbles, if what he did is like 50-50, it appears like it might be right, it might be wrong, then a person is obligated to judge favorably. If what such a person who usually does the right thing but occasionally stumbles, if what it looks wrong, like it's probably wrong, then it's preferable, although not required, to judge favorably. And I did not see this inside, but Rabbi Miller said, Chavetz Chaim says that for someone who's a repeat sinner, who is regular to do a certain avera, and a person sees them doing this avera, a person is not obligated, and it's not even a mitzvah to judge them favorably. Does anyone have any comments about this section, or any examples or stories for dan l'kaftzchus?
Yoni, I have a comment.
Okay, my dad's going to come to the computer.
This one goes back to Mrs. Mayer's question, and this is a quote in the OU magazine, which just came. And it says, quote, on October 7th, everyone got the memo. The internecine quarreling stopped abruptly. Bayechad became the buzzword of the year. And this is an OU magazine quote.
Could you repeat that? My computer isn't that loud, George.
On October 7th, everyone got the memo. The internecine quarreling stopped abruptly. Bayechad became the buzzword of the year.
What was the buzzword of the
I
year?
think biyachad.
Biyachad.
Oh, biyachad, together. Yeah. A tragedy very often brings people together.
Okay, Yoni?
But we should try to be together without a tragedy of being the terrorist. Yeah.
But remember also, in times of war, certain things, you don't start judging the people on the other side of the conflict favorably as people, and maybe they attacked and maybe they went because of this, that, and the other thing. No, you attack them, you kill them, and that's that.
We only see your glasses. Can you lower your?
Oh no, so that's that. You can't in times of war or armed conflict, or when you go. I mean, there's times to judge favorably, but when it's a crisis situation, there's no time to do that, and you can't do that. I mean, sort it out later. You have to act immediately. You can't just
Self-defense.
Why did they do it? Why did they massacre us? Why did they this? Why did they that? Let's look into ourselves. No, that's a lot of baloney. The world wants us to do that, but we can't. We simply can't.
From your words to the president's ears. From your lips to the president's ears.
I think it was a Vassell.
But I do
So-
think it's, you're right. I mean, there's a reason it's so hard to do that in the present, and you shouldn't. You don't need to do it in the present. You need to preserve yourself.
Thank you. Since my father started talking about Achdus, let's skip to the fourth parak, and we'll talk about the Indian of Achdus. In Parak Daled Pasuk Yud Zayin, Pasuk Tet Zayin, Esther is interfacing with Mordechai before, after Haman makes his decree to wipe out the Jews, and Mordechai wants Esther to go into the king to try to have the decree repealed. And Esther says to Mordechai, Lech knos es kol haYehudim. Go and gather all the Jews. And Aragerko says this is a call for Achdus. So what is Achdus? Achdus has many facets. One aspect Rabbi Katzin says of Achdus is that when we are all standing Lifnei Hashem, when we're in the presence of Hashem, this is a cause that brings about Achdus. That means that we have one people with one mission. Like, for example, when we said Na'aseh v'nishma by Har Sinai, that we will do and we will listen. And when we were Ki'ish echad b'lev echad on Har Sinai, like Rashi says to Shmos Parak Yud Tes Pasuk Beis, Divrei Maskil Vayichan. So when we're like one person with one heart, when we all on our own decided that we want to come under the Tachas Kanfei Shechin to serve Hashem, then this is a cause for Achdus. Rabbi Katzin brings from his Rebbe, the Mashgiach of Shlomo Volbe, that it's appropriate for people of the Torah to be doegu meitzar for each other. That if our fellow is in a difficult situation or has some tsar or issue going on, then we should be concerned and worried about our friend. On the opposite side, when our friends have simchas, it's appropriate that we should rejoice in our friends' simchas. Like, I was at the Yurtzeit Suda for the Boston Rebbe, Rav Levi Yitzchak Horowitz, and his grandson Rav Meilach said that Rav Levi Yitzchak had the midah that he would be misameach, he would rejoice in other people's simchas. I'll bring down a story from that Rabbi Chesses told once in Shul about an incident that happened on October 7th. He said that in the location of Ofakim, it was Simchas Torah, but they were not observing Simchas Torah. And when they were attacked, they called the IDF, but the IDF did not respond. So there were other Jews in the cities of Elazar and Efrat who were observing Simchas Torah, and when they heard that their brothers in Ofakim were getting attacked, the people of Elazar and Efrat went over to Ofakim with arms and defended their brothers. And this is an example of Achdus, of physically taking charge and risking one's own life to save other Jews, and even if they were not from. Rabbi Gerko speaks about that when we get squeezed, when we're being compressed, that brings out the best. For example, in Shmos Parak Chaf Zayin Pasuk Chaf Chasis Lamar, when the olive oil gets squeezed, that produces the best part of the olives. So too, when we get squeezed, this brings out, Rabbi Gergo feels this brings out the best in us. Esther was requesting a common mission. She wanted us to join together. And Rabbi Gergo noted it could be other people have noted this as well, but he says that there's been a renaissance of people since October 7th who want to connect to Torah and mitzvos, and Rabbi Levi Lizel, Rabbi Gerko's son-in-law, told me that he's been working with one person in particular who's been putting on tefillin every day since soon after October 7th, because he wanted to find some ways to connect, and he took it into his own hands. Do you have any comments about this, about the inyan of Achdus?
Rabbi Gerko also told the story just recently of a girl from a non-observant family. She wants to become bat mitzvah now. She wants to learn about Judaism and take on, start lighting candles and stuff. Shock makes people take an accounting of where they are in life and what is ahead. Yeah. And people make new decisions sometimes. The key is to keep that decision when things settle down and get easier again. To keep that commitment.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'll speak out of Mahalach from the Malbim in Parak Dalid about Esther's role in the Yeshua, in the salvation. The Malbim says that whenever something happens in the world that's out of the ordinary, it must be that Hashem is arranging this to happen for a purpose. For example, Esther's becoming the queen. Out of the fact that Vashti got killed and all of the women who were eligible, the fact that Esther, especially if we understand like what the Gemara says according to one opinion that she became like greenish, and the fact that Achashverosh still chose her for the queen as a queen, that was totally out of the ordinary. So it must be she was there for a purpose. Now Esther's purpose became clear to that as Mordechai outlined to her that her purpose was to save the Jews. And like Mordechai said, if it was not going to come from her, then it would come from some other source. And then you and your house of your father got lost. So we see from the Malbim that it's a big yesod that if we see something happen in life that's out of the ordinary, that's unusual, it's a tip-off that Hashem is causing it to happen for some purpose. In the fifth parak, the Gra explains that what happened was, at first Esther was truly a woman of very nice appearance, but then while she was waiting for Achashverosh, she underwent a lot of tsar, a lot of anguish. She underwent a lot of tsar, a lot of anguish when she was waiting for Achashverosh. So I was wondering, what happened to Esther's Simchas Achayim? What happened to her joy of life? How come she lost her Simchas Achayim waiting for Achashverosh? So I asked 3 of my Rebbeim, I got 3 answers. So Rabbi Miller told me, he said, really, no one's perfect. It's true, it would have been better if Esther had maintained Simchas Achayim, but this was a very hard challenge. The fact that she was on the way to being taken by Achashverosh, this king who just killed his other wife. So Rabbi Miller said no one's perfect. Like Moshe Rabbeinu got angry from time to time. Also Rav Pam, it took him a while to internalize that Hashem wanted him to be helping the Klal Yisrael in a more practical basis as opposed to just be learning. It took him a while to understand this lesson. So no one's perfect. Another approach from the Bitachon Hotline of Zebek Alambek, he said, trying makes you perfect. So as long as Esther tried to maintain her Simchas Chaim, to maintain her joy, even though she actually didn't maintain it, but the fact that she tried to maintain it, that made her perfect. And I spoke to Rabbi Gibber, the Rosh Yeshiva in Providence, and he said that Esther was perfectly entitled to be in tsar, to be in distress, because she had tsar. Her distress was that she was going to be with this Rasha, this wicked person of Achashverosh. And we find elsewhere in the Torah that, like Rabbi Katzin once spoke about, that when Leah Min was Einayim Rachos, that she had soft eyes, it's because she was crying all the time that she didn't want to be with Esav HaRasha. So Rabbi Gibber said it is appropriate that a person could be in distress for their spiritual state. However, well, yeah, we can take a question.
Was she in distress while she was waiting for him to select a bride, or she had already been selected and he was not coming to her right away?
No, the first way.
Oh. So she didn't know if she'd be picked.
Yeah, she was concerned that she would be picked.
She didn't want to be picked.
Right. She didn't want to, like Rabbi Gibber said, she didn't want to fall to this Russia.
Yeah. But her cousin Mordecai was telling her to go for it.
No, she was coerced. That's why she got seen. It was only once she became the queen, then Mordecai told her that she had to go to the king to try to save the Jews.
Oh, I thought you were talking about when Mordecai told her to be in the beauty contest.
No, Mordecai didn't tell her to be in the beauty contest. She was taken against her will
By who?
by the government who took all the basulos.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Hmm? Okay.
Wait, so if she was taken, how did he have a chance to tell her not to say who her people were? I mean, how did he communicate?
Well, we find
Because
in the
if she was queen, you could get a servant could be sent out, but before that, wasn't she essentially captive in that whatever that beauty contest?
Harem. Yeah.
Harem?
well, it could be that Mordecai, before Esther was taken into the be prepared to be with the king, Mordecai told her that if you get selected to be the queen, you should not reveal your identity.
Okay.
And additionally, we find in the megillah that there were messages passed from Esther to Mordecai through Hasach, through the Shliach. So later on in the Megillah, and the Gemara on Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph says that Esther is zocha to Ruach HaKodesh. And my question is that Ruach HaKodesh requires simcha. In order for the divine inspiration, when Hashem sends certain messages through a person has to be in a state of joy to get Ruach HaKodesh. And this is at this point when Esther has been the queen. So how did she go from being in distress, waiting for the king, to now that she's the queen, she's in such a state of simcha that she has Ruach HaKodesh. So I was speaking about Rabbi Miller, and he said that Esther at this point is besimcha because Mordecai has told her, go and try to save the Jews, go to the king. So the fact that she had an opportunity to save the Jews, this brought about her simcha. I thought to bring down a story that I once heard on the Bitachon hotline about the aspect of positive thinking, and how a possible Yeshua, a possible salvation could come. There was a bachar, young man who was in Shidduchim, who was trying to get married, and he had a lot of issues. So he went to his mashgiach, his rebbe in yeshiva, and he said, Rebbe, how am I ever going to get married with all my issues? So the mashgiach told him, he said as follows. He said, you're going to get married not in spite of your issues, but rather because of your issues. And lo and behold, this bachar, he met a girl who wanted someone who had been through challenges and been through nisyonos, and they got married. So had he had a smooth life, this girl would not have wanted to marry him. But because he had gone through challenges and overcome them, this girl wanted to marry him. And the bachar saw that what the mashgiach told him was true, that because of his issues, that's why he was able to get married.
Very nice.
Do we have any answer? Do we have any comments?
Well, I love the story. There was a man trying to, find dates, and he had a bad scar, and women didn't want to talk to him, didn't want to date him. They weren't attracted to him. And one day, a matchmaker had him meet a woman who initially also didn't want to go out with him. But through time, she agreed she would date him. And the story came out, she was telling him that when she was a little girl, she was up on a tree and she was falling, and like this other little boy came and like tried to save her, and a limb fell down and cut him very badly, but she was saved. And as the years went on, it turns out that this was the man with the scar was the man that little boy who saved her. And then there's another way I thought that I heard actually that she was supposed to get injured. She was supposed to get the scar, but God had it that He got it for her. And so when she heard these reasons, her heart was just filled with love for Him. And it's a true story. And they got married and had a family.
Okay, thank you.
So, the example you gave made me think of that.
Oh, thanks.
I told that story once in Susan's class, and I remember it.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
So sweet.
The Gemara cites a brisa which handles why did Esther invite Haman to the party that Esther was making with Achashverosh? If the whole purpose of the party was to convince Achashverosh to let the Jews go, what role did Haman have being at the party? So there are many answers to this question. Do you have a comment?
I was thinking so he couldn't escape.
Okay.
But my question is, I've always had a different question, so you do your question and then I'll ask mine.
So Nehemiah says that Esther was concerned that the Jews would rely on her as the queen. The fact that they had a Jewish queen, so she feared that the Jews would be like, oh, we don't really need to daven to Hashem, we've got this taken care of, the queen is Jewish, so we'll just rely on our political power, our political connections. So to show Ki'ilu that she was turning her back on the Jews and that she was like partying with the arch enemy Haman, so she invited Haman to the party, and thereby the Jews would feel like, oh, we can't rely on the queen, we have to daven to Hashem. Our only reliance will be on Hashem. Esther is teaching us this lesson that Yeshua, that salvation is dependent on reliance on Hashem and feeling like we need Hashem to help us and not on political power. Rabbi Lezel was telling me that not only did we have Esther as the queen, but also Mordechai, who was a Jew, had just saved the king's life with the incident with Big Sambasarish. So Mordechai had just saved the king's life, so we would think that the king would have a lot of Hakaras HaTov to Mordechai, but yet this was the very instance that Haman rose up and caused. This is the very incident that the very time that Haman rose up and caused his decree against the Jews. And Esther called on the Jews, like we spoke about earlier, to have a common goal and to do tshuva. And like Rabbi Gerko brought on the Lashon, Ein lano mi lehishen el avim shema shamayim. That Klal Yisrael realized that we didn't have anyone to rely on. We didn't have Esther, the queen. We didn't have Mordechai, who would just save the king's life, to rely on. Rather, we only had Hashem to rely on. Okay, Mrs. Mary, do you have a comment?
Well, my question has always been on why were there two parties? Other than, if it weren't in the Torah, and I was just like, if I were a literary critic, I would say there were two parties because they needed something to happen. They needed Achashverosh to have a bad night and looking over his book, and then coming out, figuring, and working out a way to have, Achashverosh honor Mordecai and get really angry. And that was why they had to have a second party. Why things couldn't just be done on the first party. That was always my question.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Eli Malach, you ever heard a svara why we need two parties?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, the Gemara has many reasons about why Haman was invited to the party, but I'm not sure about two parties.
Maybe it was to throw off the scent. To
Pretty
make.
much the first one, you know, he was honored, he was feted, he had all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. I just always found it weird. It's like, you know, what do you want? I'll give you up to half my kingdom, and if you please me, and if I have found favor, please come to another part.
Yeah.
Odd thing. That's why I'm thinking, you know, again, if I were a critic, you know, I would say, hey, that's a plot device. But I know that this is in the Torah, so there's more to it than that.
So doesn't the Torah, when it has double of something, it's for emphasis, strong emphasis. I don't know what the emphasis is. Any idea, Amy or Yoni? Why the two?
I think it's interesting that you know, Esther is using her quietness and her wiles to. It's sometimes, you know, if you come out, you just say something. You could either be believed or not believed. But if you get the other person to, like, if you only go halfway and the other person comes the other halfway to meet you, so, you know, he could have just had a party and said, see, Haman's the bad guy. And either the king would believe her or not. But the way the thing unfolded was the king said, wait a minute. What's going on here? Haman is, well, he's doing a lot of things. He's influencing me. He's and then at the nighttime, you know, he's proposing, you know, dress somebody in my clothes, in my horse, and traveling that way, and then when he goes outside, he goes back in, and someone has thrown himself on the couch, and he goes, oh, and in my own house, you're going to seduce my own wife. You want to take my clothing, you want to take this, you want to take that. So it's the king's decision. It's stronger when the king makes the decision rather than, you know, my wife told me what to do, because he's not the kind of person we know that his wife tells him what to do. That's not how it works. So she figured it out that, you know, because you're always wondering, you know, what is with Vashti? She was smart. She had her own party. She did her own things, but it didn't work. And with Esther, she did things differently. She was forceful and strong, but not in a, you know, in your face way, in a subtle, you know, like she led the king to make the decision, and that it was his decision.
Thank
And
you,
that's
Mrs.
why
Fussell.
we needed the two parties, because in one it would just be her telling him. By the second one, it's his suspicions and it's him making this decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Also in the fifth parak, we find that even as Haman is at the height of his power, Mordechai is lo kan v'lo za, which the Mepharshim explains to mean lo kan, that Mordechai did not bow down to Haman because he felt it was the wrong thing to do to bow down to Haman, and not only that, but he was lo za, he had no fear. Mordechai also had no fear of Haman, in that Mordechai practically taught Torah. Rashi says that Haman banned Torah study, and nonetheless, we find in the Gemara that Mordechai taught the halachas of the kamitza, one of the processes of the korbanos, to his talmidim on daf tes zayin and aleph, despite Haman's ban. So Mordechai followed just like Rabbi Akiva after him, just like many others in Russia, of teaching Torah despite it being banned, because Mordechai had no fear. Now the Katzin says that if we're concerned about fulfilling Ratzon Hashem, if we want to do right by Hashem, then we can be free of any other concerns. We don't have to be concerned about anything else. I want to say over a Mesa story with the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, Rabbi Mordechai Hager, who was nifter around 2018, that Rabbi Feig from Muncie told me. So, Rabbi Hager, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, when he was later in life, he suffered a fall, and he injured his spine, and he needed serious surgery, and it could be he would be paralyzed from the surgery. So on the day of the surgery, he called together a minyan, and he davened mincha for 40 minutes. That's 40 minutes. And after mincha was over, he said that he was ready for the operation. So he was wheeled in to the place where he got his anesthesia, and the operation occurred. And after the operation, the anesthesiologist remarked to the family a most interesting thing, that Rabbi Hager, his blood pressure did not elevate when he was being wheeled in for the anesthesia and being wheeled into the operating room. Almost every other patient the anesthesiologist ever saw would start to get somewhat nervous when they were being wheeled in. But Rabbi Hager, he was so with Hashem that he was not at all fearful of the operation, and therefore his blood pressure did not rise when he was being wheeled in. Does anyone have any comments about this concept about not being fearful?
My friend, when she gets her blood pressure tested, it's always higher, and she calls it the white coat syndrome.
I've heard that, and in the doctor's office I've heard that.
Right, in the doctor's office, yeah. And then, the person taking the blood pressure test will say, okay, let's just wait a few minutes, and, later in the exam it's retaken, and then it's usually back down to more normal. For some people. I mean, I don't get elevated when I have my blood pressure taken personally. Each to his own.
Now, there's definitely more to say on the Megillah. I was speaking with Rabbi Miller. I told him what I thought was the main ideas of the Megillah, and I said, is there anything to add? And he said, you could add from now until next Purim. So there's definitely more to say, but I want to talk about the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos. One of the four mitzvahs that we fulfill on Purim. So the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tafresh Tzadi Hey outlines the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos, which is to give 2 ready-to-eat foods to one other Jewish person on Purim Day. Now, there are several reasons that are provided for what is the reason for this mitzvah. The Chassam Sofer, based on the Rambam, says that we need to make sure that our fellow Jews have food for the Purim Suda. That's why we give them food on Purim. Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, the author of L'Chadodi, says the reason is because of Achdus. We want to have brotherhood, friendship, and the Jews of the Bach already said this reason, that we want to have brotherhood, connection, friendship between Jews. And what Shlomo Alkabetz is saying is that it comes to be fakir to the opposite of Haman, who said that we were am mefuzar umefurad, that we were disunited. So we want to give gifts of food to show that we have achdus. The Sefer Todah, Book of Our Heritage, says that we have hakaras, we give mishloach manos to demonstrate our hakaras hatov. I think this means our gratitude to other people, to thank them for having a positive role in our lives. But I think it's also to thank Hashem. We give the food item to the other person, and in doing so, we thank Hashem for putting that person in my life. Rabbi Katzin says that giving Mishloach Manos is in order to work on our middah of giving, to give something from ourselves, and certainly spending money, effort, and time to shop, pack, and deliver Mishloach Manos. We're working on our middah of giving. Marashiva Rabbi Katzin, he says from his Rebbe, of Shlomo Volmi's Rebbe, Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz, the Mashgiach and the Mir, a very interesting thing. Rabbi Yerucham compares the Mishloach Manos that we give on Purim with the Al Chaitz that we say on Yom Kippur. And Rabbi Yerucham actually says that the Mishloach Manos that we give has the potential to be more long-lasting than the Al Chaitz on Yom Kippur. When we resolve ourselves to not do a certain Aveira again on Yom Kippur, that hopefully will impact us for the future. But when we give Mishloach Manos to our friend, that could shaf reyes, that could create friendship for years to come. One aspect of this mitzvah, Rabbi Katzin says, is that it's appropriate for a person to give Mishloach Manos to a person who he's not fond of. Like if a person had some difficulty or ill will towards someone during the year, it's appropriate to give Mishloach Manos and to show that the person is making an effort and wants to be Marva Reyes and to create some sort of friendship and camaraderie, or at least be on better terms with this person through giving Mishloach Manos. And they want to be on better terms in the upcoming year. Another related mitzvah, for Mishloach Manos, I think it's also worthwhile to give to people who are not as involved in the Jewish community, the people who may be more on the outside who aren't as involved. It's worthwhile to give Mishloach Manos to bring them in and make them feel included. A related mitzvah is a mitzvah of matanos levyonim, gifts to the poor. This is money or food given to poor people on Purim. The Rabbanim usually distribute these monies. As far as what's the minimal amount for matanos levyonim, Rabbi Heinemann from Baltimore, Rabbi Miller's Rebbe, says that the minimal share is the cost of a bread roll. So whatever a roll would be sold for at the store is really whatever is 2 kazesim. So Rabbi Miller said that definitely $2 is more than enough, but for sure, the more that one increases, the better. The Shulchan Aruch says for Mishloach Manos, for gifts to our friends, Harizim Shavach, the one who gives more is more praiseworthy, either higher quality or to more friends. And the Rambam says, an independent rule, that ideally, whatever a person spends on Mishloach Manos, he should spend even more on Matanos Levyonim, on gifts to the poor. Mishloach Manos and Matanos Levyonim both apply to men and women, just like all the mitzvahs of Purim apply to men and women, except for drinking on Purim, which is only for men. But a married woman could choose to fulfill her obligation of Mishloach Manos and Matanos Levyonim through her husband, or she could decide to give herself to her female friends. Do we have any comments about this section of Mishloach Manos Matanos Levyonim?
They're very beautiful mitzvot to include people on the outside, make them feel included by giving Mishloach.
Thank you.
Well, there's a lot to think about for Purim. We're about to start assembling my Mishloach tomorrow, so
Very nice.
try and keep some of that in mind as my dining room table is taken over.
And you're hosting a Suda too. Quite a lot.
Yeah. So in the last couple minutes, we'll just mention a couple topics about the Purim Suda. So the Meiri says that, so first off, the Suda's Purim is a festive meal that's eaten usually late in the day, but before Shia, before sunset on Purim day. The Meiri says that nothing should be lacking in terms of food or drink from the Purim. It's appropriate to, if a person usually covers their table for a Suda, then you could cover the table for this Suda. The Mishnah Berurah says that for this Purim Suda, we gather friends and family, as it's not possible to have proper joy by oneself. And Rabbi Katzin told me that this is true for life in general, that we can only have true joy when we're when we're we can only have true joy when we're with other people, or at least when we have other people in our lives. So this year Shkia and Sharon is about 7 p.m. So the main meal should be served before this time, but the meal may extend into nightfall. As what I mentioned about earlier about drinking on Purim, there's a familiar, famous discussion of Chayv Inish Musume about drinking on Purim, but Rabbi Miller told me that there's no concept and no mitzvah and no suggestion for a woman to drink alcohol on Purim. This is specifically a mitzvah that's incumbent on men. A woman could drink if she wanted to, but it's not a mitzvah. Do we have any comments about Sudas Purim?
Is the mitzvah to drink because you are to not be able to tell the difference between Haman and Mordechai?
Right.
Or is it just to add to the joy of the holiday?
Right, well, it's Hainu Hach. It's that in knowing that, like Elio Gestander my Chavrusa says, not knowing the difference between Ar Haman, which is the bad, and Baruch Mordechai, which is the good, if we realize that everything is from the good, even that which appears to be bad, then we're tapping into one of the joyous parts of Purim, which is recognizing that everything is from Hashem and everything is from the good.
Because a commentator had said, an ancient commentator had said that when you dream, you are in a state of subconsciousness, and that that could represent the ability to blend Mordechai and Haman.
Yeah, that's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says that for a man, a person could drink more than his usual, and then take a nap, and then he won't know the difference while he's sleeping between Ar Haman and Baruch Mordechai.
I was just thinking naps in general for both genders.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and I want to wish everyone a Freilich and Purim, Chag Purim Sameach.
Well, pray with the forum to everyone, and yeah. Oh, me. Hi. I did read. I knew you were there. I knew you were there.
I was there. I did read one more little commentary on forum today. It was talking about whenever you give over an idea, that you should, if it's your own idea, fine. But if you received it from something else, another source, you must always cite the source, the name, the book, whatever it is. And I said one of the examples of this is had the Chronicles not had Mordecai's name attributed, that he found, that he gave over the names of the two people that wanted to kill the king, the whole story would have told it so differently. He would not have been honored, and Ahasuerus might have got away with his plans. But because the name was mentioned, he did receive his rewards.
That's a great example, Nini. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Winstein. This is Mishnah in Avos, Parak Vav Mishnah Vav.
Oh, that's where it says it?
Yeah.
In Mishnah Avos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you for all your research, Yoni.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.